Second Variety by Philip K. Dick. This story appeared in Space Science Fiction, May of 1953. Extensive research by Project Gutenberg at Gutenberg.org did not uncover any evidence that the U.S. copyright on this publication was renewed. Part 4 of 5. Nothing was visible. Only ash and occasional trees. But there, not more than 50 yards ahead, was the entrance of the forward command bunker. The bunker from which he had come. Hendricks watched silently. No motion, no sign of life. Nothing stirred. Klaus slithered up beside him.
"Where is it?"
"Down there." Hendricks passed him the glasses. Clouds of ash rolled across the evening sky. The world was darkening. They had a couple of hours of light left at the most. Probably not that much.
"I don't see anything,"
Klaus said.
"That tree there, the stump, by the pile of bricks. The entrance is to the right of the bricks. I'll have to take your word for it. You and Tasso cover me from here. You'll be able to sight all the way to the bunker entrance." "You're going down alone?" "With my wrist tab, I'll be safe. The ground around the bunker is a living field of claws. They collect down in the ash, like crabs. Without tabs, you wouldn't have a chance." "Maybe you're right." "I'll walk slowly all the way, as soon as I know for certain." "If they're down inside the bunker, you won't be able to get back up here. They go fast. You don't realize." "What do you suggest?"
Klaus considered.
"I don't know. Get them to come up to the surface, so you can see."
Hendricks brought his transmitter from his belt, raising the antenna.
"Let's get started."
Klaus signaled to Tasso. She crawled expertly up the side of the rise to where they were sitting.
"He's going down alone," Klaus said. "We'll cover him from here. As soon as you see him start back, fire past him at once. They come quick."
"You're not very optimistic," Tasso said.
"No, I'm not."
Hendricks opened the breech of his gun, checking it carefully.
"Maybe things are all right." "You didn't see them. Hundreds of them, all the same, pouring out like ants." "I should be able to find out without going down all the way."
Hendricks locked his gun, gripping it in one hand, the transmitter in the other.
"Well, wish me luck."
Klaus put out his hand.
"Don't go down until you're sure. Talk to them from up here. Make them show themselves."
Hendricks stood up. He stepped down the side of the rise. A moment later, he was walking slowly toward the pile of bricks and debris beside the dead tree stump. Toward the entrance of the forward command bunker. Nothing stirred. He raised the transmitter, clicking it on.
"Scott, can you hear me?"
Silence.
"Scott, this is Hendricks. Can you hear me? I'm standing outside the bunker. You should be able to see me in the view sight."
He listened, the transmitter gripped tightly. No sound, only static. He walked forward. A claw burrowed out of the ash and raced toward him. It halted a few feet away and then slunk off. A second claw appeared, one of the big ones with feelers. It moved toward him, studied him intently, and then fell in behind him, dogging respectfully after him a few paces away. A moment later, a second big claw joined it. Silently, the claws trailed him as he walked slowly toward the bunker. Hendricks stopped, and behind him the claws came to a halt. He was close now, almost to the bunker steps.
"Scott, can you hear me? I'm standing right above you, outside on the surface. Are you picking me up?"
He waited, holding his gun against his side, the transmitter tightly to his ear. Time passed. He strained to hear, but there was only silence. Silence and faint static. Then distantly, metallically, "This is Scott." The voice was neutral, cold. He could not identify it, but the earphone was minute.
"Scott, listen, I'm standing right above you. I'm on the surface, looking down into the bunker entrance." "Yes?" "Can you see me?" "Yes." "Through the view sight. You have the sight trained on me." "Yes."
Hendricks pondered. A circle of claws waited quietly around him, gray metal bodies on all sides of him.
"Is everything all right in the bunker? Nothing unusual has happened?"
"Everything is all right."
"Will you come up to the surface? I want to see you for a moment."
Hendricks took a deep breath.
"Come up here with me. I want to talk to you." "Come down. I'm giving you an order."
Silence.
"Are you coming?"
Hendricks listened. There was no response.
"I order you to come to the surface."
"Come down." Hendricks set his jaw.
"Let me talk to Leone."
There was a long pause. He listened to the static. Then a voice came, hard, thin, metallic. The same as the other. "This is Leone."
"Hendricks, I'm on the surface, at the bunker entrance. I want one of you to come up here."
"Come down."
"Why come down? I'm giving you an order."
Silence. Hendricks lowered the transmitter. He looked carefully around him. The entrance was just ahead, almost at his feet. He lowered the antenna and fastened the transmitter to his belt. Carefully, he gripped his gun with both hands. He moved forward a step at a time. If they could see him, they knew he was starting toward the entrance. He closed his eyes a moment. Then he put his foot on the first step that led downward. 2 Davids came up at him, their faces identical and expressionless. He blasted them into particles. More came rushing silently up, a whole pack of them, all exactly the same. Hendricks turned and raced back, away from the bunker, back toward the rise. At the top of the rise, Tasso and Klaus were firing down. The small claws were already streaking up toward them, shining metal spheres going fast, racing frantically through the ash. But he had no time to think about that. He knelt down, aiming at the bunker entrance, gun against his cheek. The Davids were coming out in groups, clutching their teddy bears, their thin, knobby legs pumping as they ran up the steps to the surface. Hendricks fired into the main body of them. They burst apart, wheels and springs flying in all directions. He fired again through the mist of particles. A giant, lumbering figure rose up in the bunker entrance, tall and swaying. Hendricks paused, amazed. A man, a soldier, with one leg, supporting himself with a crutch. "Major!" Tasso's voice came. More firing. The huge figure moved forward. Davids swarmed around it. Hendricks broke out of his freeze. Oh, the first variety, the wounded soldier. He aimed and fired. The soldier burst into bits, parts and relays flying. Now many Davids were out on the flat ground, away from the bunker. He fired again and again, moving slowly back, half crouching and aiming. From the rise, Klaus fired down. The side of the rise was alive with claws making their way up. Hendricks retreated toward the rise, running and crouching. Tasso had left Klaus and was circling slowly to the right, moving away from the rise. A David slipped up toward him, its small white face expressionless, brown hair hanging down in its eyes. It bent over suddenly, opening its arms. Its teddy bear hurtled down and leapt across the ground, bounding toward him. Hendricks fired. The bear and the David both dissolved. He grinned, blinking. It was like a dream. Up here! Tasso's voice. Hendricks made his way toward her. She was over by some column of concrete, walls of a ruined building. She was firing past him with the hand pistol Klaus had given her.
Thanks.
He joined her, gasping for breath. She pulled him back behind the concrete, fumbling at her belt. Close your eyes. She unfastened a globe from her waist. Rapidly, she unscrewed the cap, locking it into place. Close your eyes and get down. She threw the bomb. It sailed in an arc, an expert, rolling and bouncing to the entrance of the bunker. 2 wounded soldiers stood uncertainly by the brick pile. More Davids poured from behind them, out onto the plain. One of the wounded soldiers moved toward the bomb, stooping awkwardly down to pick it up. The bomb went off. The concussion whirled Hendricks around, throwing him on his face. A hot wind rolled over him. Dimly, he saw Tasso standing behind the columns, firing slowly and methodically at the Davids coming out of the raging clouds of white fire. Back along the rise, Klaus struggled with a ring of claws circling around him. He retreated, blasting at them and moving back, trying to break through the ring. Hendricks struggled to his feet. His head ached. He could hardly see. Everything was licking at him, raging and whirling. His right arm would not move. Tasso pulled back toward him. Come on, let's go!
Klaus, he's still up there.
Come on! Tasso dragged Hendricks back, away from the columns. Hendricks shook his head, trying to clear it. Tasso led him rapidly away, her eyes intense and bright, watching for claws that had escaped the blast. One David came out of the rolling clouds of flame. Tasso blasted it. No more appeared.
But Klaus, what about him?
Hendricks stopped, standing unsteadily. Come on! They retreated, moving farther and farther away from the bunker. A few small claws followed them for a little while and then gave up, turning back and going off. At last, Tasso stopped. We can stop here and get our breaths. Hendricks sat down on some heaps of debris. He wiped his neck, gasping.
We left Klaus back there.
Tasso said nothing. She opened her gun, sliding a fresh round of blast cartridges into place. Hendricks stared at her, dazed.
You left him back there on purpose.
Tasso snapped the gun together. She studied the heaps of rubble around them, her face expressionless, as if she were watching for something.
What is it?
Hendricks demanded.
What are you looking for? Is something coming?
He shook his head, trying to understand. What was she doing? What was she waiting for? He could see nothing. Ash lay all around them, ash and ruins. Occasional stark tree trunks without leaves or branches.
What?
Tasso cut him off. Be still. Her eyes narrowed. Suddenly her gun came up. Hendricks turned, following her gaze. Back the way they had come, a figure appeared. The figure walked unsteadily toward them. Its clothes were torn. It limped as it made its way along, going very slowly and carefully, stopping now and then, resting and getting its strength. Once it almost fell. It stood for a moment, trying to steady itself. Then it came on. Klaus. Hendricks stood up.
Klaus!
He started toward him.
How the hell did you?
Tasso fired. Hendricks swung back. She fired again, the blast passing him, a searing line of heat. The beam caught Klaus in the chest. He exploded, gears and wheels flying. For a moment he continued to walk. Then he swayed back and forth. He crashed to the ground, his arms flung out. A few more wheels rolled away. Silence. Tasso turned to Hendrix. Now you understand why he killed Rudy. Hendrix sat down again slowly. He shook his head. He was numb. He could not think. Do you see? Tasso said. Do you understand? Hendrix said nothing. Everything was slipping away from him, faster and faster. Darkness rolling and plucking at him. He closed his eyes. Hendrix opened his eyes slowly. His body ached all over. He tried to sit up, but needles of pain shot through his arm and shoulder. He gasped. Don't try to get up, Tasso said. She bent down, putting her cold hand against his forehead. It was night. A few stars glinted above, shining through the drifting clouds of ash. Hendrix lay back, his teeth locked. Tasso watched him impassively. She had built a fire with some wood and weeds. The fire licked feebly, hissing at a metal cup suspended over it. Everything was silent. Unmoving darkness beyond the fire.
So he was the second variety?
Hendrix murmured. I had always thought so.
Why didn't you destroy him sooner?
He wanted to know. You held me back. Tasso crossed to the fire to look into the metal cup. Coffee. It'll be ready to drink in a while. She came back and sat down beside him. Presently she opened her pistol and began to disassemble the firing mechanism, studying it intently. This is a beautiful gun, Tasso said, half aloud. The construction is superb.
What about them, the claws?
The concussion from the bomb put most of them out of action. They're delicate. Highly organized, I suppose.
The Davids, too?
Yes.
How did you happen to have a bomb like that?
Tasso shrugged. We designed it. You shouldn't underestimate our technology, Major. Without such a bomb, you and I would no longer exist.
Very useful.
Tasso stretched out her legs, warming her feet in the heat of the fire. It surprised me that you did not seem to understand after he killed Rudy. Why did you think he...
I told you, I thought he was afraid.
Really? You know, Major, for a little while I suspected you, because you wouldn't let me kill him. I thought you might be protecting him. She laughed.
Are we safe here?
Hendrix asked presently. For a while, until we get reinforcements from some other area. Tasso began to clean the interior of the gun with a bit of rag. She finished and pushed the mechanism back into place. She closed the gun, running her finger along the barrel.
We were lucky, Hendrix murmured.
Yes, very lucky.
Thanks for pulling me away.
Tasso did not answer. She glanced up at him, her eyes bright in the firelight. Hendrix examined his arm. He could not move his fingers. His whole side seemed numb. Down inside him was a dull, steady ache. How do you feel? Tasso asked.
My arm is damaged.
Anything else?
Internal injuries.
You didn't get down when the bomb went off. Hendrix said nothing. He watched Tasso pour the coffee from the cup into a flat metal pan. She brought it over to him.
Thanks.
He struggled up enough to drink. It was hard to swallow. His insides turned over and he pushed the pan away.
That's all I can drink now.
Tasso drank the rest. Time passed. The clouds of ash moved across the dark sky above them. Hendrix rested, his mind blank. After a while, he became aware that Tasso was standing over him, gazing down at him.
What is it?
He murmured. Do you feel any better?
Some.
You know, Major, if I hadn't dragged you away, they would have got you. You would be dead like Rudy.
I know.
Do you want to know why I brought you out? I could have left you. I could have left you there.
Why did you bring me out?
Because we have to get away from here. Tasso stirred the fire with a stick, peering calmly down into it. No human being can live here. When the reinforcements come, we won't have a chance. I've pondered about it while you were unconscious. We have perhaps 3 hours before they come.
And you expect me to get us away?
That's right. I expect you to get us out of here.
Why me?
Because I don't know any way. Her eyes shone at him in the half-light, bright and steady. If you can't get us out of here, they'll kill us within 3 hours. I see nothing else ahead. Well, Major, what are you going to do? I've been waiting all night. While you were unconscious, I sat here, waiting and listening. It's almost dawn. The night is almost over.
Hendricks considered. It's curious,
he said at last. Curious?
That you should think I can get us out of here. I wonder what you think I can do.
Can you get us to the moon base?
The moon base? How?
There must be some way.
Hendricks shook his head. No, there's no way that I know of.
Tasso said nothing. For a moment her steady gaze wavered. She ducked her head, turning abruptly away. She scrambled to her feet. More coffee?
No.
Suit yourself. Tasso drank silently. He could not see her face. He lay back against the ground, deep in thought, trying to concentrate. It was hard to think. His head still hurt, and the numbing daze still hung over him.
There might be one way,
he said suddenly. Oh?
How soon is dawn?
2 hours? The sun will be coming up shortly.
There's supposed to be a ship near here. I've never seen it, but I know it exists.
What kind of a ship? Her voice was sharp.
A rocket cruiser.
Will it take us off? To the moon base?
It's supposed to, in case of emergency.
He rubbed his forehead. What's wrong?
My head. It's hard to think. I can hardly concentrate. The bomb.
Is the ship near here? Tasso slid over beside him, settling down on her haunches. How far is it? Where is it?
I'm trying to think.
Her fingers dug into his arm. Nearby? Nearby? Her voice was like iron. Where would it be? Would they store it underground? Hidden underground?
Yes, in a storage locker.
How do we find it? Is it marked? Is there a code marker to identify it?
Hendricks concentrated. No markings. No code symbol.
What then?
A sign.
What sort of sign? Hendricks did not answer. End of part 4.